Hello dear singers, we have another video for you guys today and also another topic. Most of the concepts that I like to focus on in a video usually stem from frequent mistakes that I see when I'm teaching or easy misinterpretations that seem to constantly come up over and over and over again, as well as questions that I get asked over and over again that I feel need certain clarifying. So with that being said, these past couple of days I've had the honor to be able to teach quite a few wonderful singers in person, both through a masterclass setting and in-person voice lessons, usually in between rehearsals and performances and so. And one thing that keeps coming up is most singers seem to be very, very preoccupied with what's happening here. And we kind of forget that the motor, the start of the engine, right? The start of the phonation process happens here. It all has to do with air. And so I see a lot of singers that come across problems that could be easily fixed by just leaning more on the air, releasing more of the sound, by thinking more aspiration. And this can become very confusing if this isn't functioning. And I would even say that we start to blame this when honestly, this is all fine and most of this will fix itself if you understand that phonation is caused by a release of air pressure that makes contact with the chords, causing them to vibrate and phonate in an open acoustical space. But we're always very focused on, is my mouth like this or like that? Or And of course, those things are important. I don't want to minimize them. I talk about them a lot myself. But if you've seen any of my videos, I'm always the back to basics guy. Break down the concepts, simplify it for yourself, build the puzzle one piece at a time. Don't try to just put it all together all at once because no one can handle that. So a lot of what I do involves more than just teaching voice. I like to teach, because this is the way I've taught myself, to open up the instrument, to be able to sing with least amount of unnecessary tension, unnecessary pressure, so that we can continue the process of the tilt, which causes the vocal cords to stretch and thin as we ascend, and vice versa as we descend, making it much easier to open up our range, sing high notes, and so on. So a lot of what I teach has always been to help those who are at the beginning stages of singing and even advanced stages of singing to hopefully let go of some bad muscle memory and bad habits, to open up the voice and just phonate very freely with ease, very tensionless. And this is what I like to call setting up an environment, a safe environment, to experiment and play around with stretching the chords, ascending in a safe environment. If we are pushing, holding, tensing in any way, it's not a safe environment. We are going to scream. We are going to hurt ourselves. We are going to grunt. Our larynx is going to choke us because we don't have the capability, or we are not doing the process to open up the throat to allow the stretching to happen and engage those cricothyroid muscles. I'll talk about all of this in my videos. So the reason why I'm making this one is to go further in depth into the very core of sound, which is aspiration, and how to allow that flow of air to make contact with the chords so we can phonate in a manner that's probably very different to perhaps what you are doing at home if you find yourself singing with tension, if you find yourself not being able to sing past a D or an E without having to flip to falsetto or screaming your way through. There is this idea and concept going around that we should stop the air when we sing. And there have been different formulations of it, you know, stop the air, evaporate the air, halt the air, connect with the air. I think terminology is everything, because the way you say something, even though to you is very clear, perhaps to the singer or to many others who are listening, could be misinterpreted and dangerous. And this is something that all teachers and singers who are trying to describe what they're feeling when they sing this is sort of the thing we need to juggle with. It's kind of a curse because we want to make sure we get our ideas across correctly. So when teachers say stop the air, I, after doing this for, way over a decade, understand now what they mean. But if I was someone who was just starting and someone were to tell me stop the air when you sing, I would go into some sort of exaggerated Valsalva maneuver. I'm stopping the air. And it would be quite tensionful because when we completely stop the air, we are rigidifying our vocal cords and in an extreme way closing them so as no air comes out. This has a lot of muscular involvement, unnecessary muscular involvement when it comes to singing. Our vocal cords are thick, and usually when we do this, it's very difficult to keep an open throat position. So all the things we don't want to do when singing is what we do when we think of an idea like stopping the air, almost like holding your breath. Now, that's not what they're saying, of course. You cannot sing without air passing through the vocal cords, initiating vibration. And I'm gonna say this again. You cannot phonate without air passing through the vocal cords, initiating vibration, which causes sound, phonation, and that phonation needs to bounce in an open acoustical space, which we call an open throat. That's how we have access to higher harmonics and resonance. So don't take this the wrong way. I'm not disagreeing with teachers who say things like that. Perhaps the only thing I disagree with is the terminology or the way it's said. I think it would be a lot more helpful to say, instead of stopping the air, I would say make contact with the airflow. Allow the vocal cords to make contact as the air is passing through. So if this is air just passing through with no contact and aspiration, there's no phonation, all you hear is just air flowing through open cords, then making contact with that air without stopping the energy and the pressure of that air, of that aspiration. So again, open throat, aspiration. Air flowing through open cords, there's no sound. Now we're gonna make contact with the air. Open throat, inhale. So in order to get from point A to point B, I know most of you, if you guys are watching this video, you can't help it but want to go to point B. No. One of the ways I like to open up voices or help to release and start to get a singer to sing much more resonant, much more voluminous without shouting, without pushing the voice, without pressure. And there's been a lot of singers which in the span of less than an hour, we were able to get there. It's just now about taking it home and repeating it, repeating it, and repeating it. It's, like I mentioned, starting from the basic. Much like a fireplace bellow or a chimney bellow, right? I don't know if you've seen those. It's the ones that you can blow air to a fire in a chimney place to make it grow. If you look at something like that, right, what it has is it has some sort of chamber, a sac, that is able to trap air through a vacuum. Now that air is trapped inside this bag or sac or chamber, okay, and there's a narrow escape in a fireplace bellow. There's a very narrow opening. And what you do is all that air that you have trapped, you're now releasing it by compressing the bag, right, with your arms. And now you have a stream of air flowing through a very narrow opening. If the opening was bigger, you wouldn't get a stream of air. You would get a puff of air. And there would be very little resistance to that bellow. But because it's narrow, a lot of air is rushing through a narrow opening. Therefore, there is resistance. And you feel the resistance when you compress. And as you slowly compress the bellow, you feel how this rush of air meets this endpoint, this narrow opening, and you have a pressurized stream of air. Okay? An accordion works in a similar manner. It traps air and you're able to compress the air as you squeeze the accordion. An air pump, when you're, inflating the tires of a bicycle, works similar in a way in which you're trapping air in a chamber and slowly releasing air through a very, very narrow opening. We are built in a similar way. Our respiratory system is built in a similar way, in which our lungs are that chamber that traps air. It's like a vacuum, right? In order to do this, right, first thing we want to do is expand our intercostals, right? These are the ribs that start from our spine and wrap around the body. Expand it, get them out of the way, right? I have always felt this more of a lateral expansion. A lot of singers feel it in their back. Because the intercostals are out of the way, the diaphragm can descend, and now the lungs are free to inflate with air. We have now, like the bellow, we now have trapped air. In this analogy, our arms, which are compressing the bellow, will be replaced by our diaphragm. Our diaphragm is our arms that are slowly going to squeeze the lungs, which will release air. Now, the opening. The bellow has a narrow opening, so all that air rushes through a narrow point. We have our vocal cords. If we keep our vocal cords open, then the diaphragm will squeeze the lungs without resistance at all. All the air will just escape in a puff. No resistance. But if the vocal cords are adducted without extra tension, adducted just enough to make contact with the air, then we have resistance in the diaphragm, but also not muscular tension. That is what gets us tired. We are maintaining minimum adduction, not aggressive adduction, but minimum adduction. And by minimum, I mean just enough to make contact with the air to get a resonant sound, to connect with the breath. Okay, so now that we understand the process, connecting and making contact with the air to initiate vibration, that's the goal, that's it. Stop there, don't continue. The thing is, we make contact and then we continue to reinforce the adduction, and then it's too much. We thicken the cords, we make them fat, and they're not able to stretch. It's like trying to stretch a really fat piece of rubber. It's very difficult as we ascend. Just enough to make contact and keep it flexible, buoyant, so that it's stretchy. For that to happen, I want to take us through the process of the motor starting to gradually make contact with the air until we are able to resonate into a sound without force. And I want you to do this at home with me as we do it together. And I'm hoping, it's the hope, right, that by the end of the video, we can at least get a resonant sound out of everyone at home. So first things first, as you inhale and you're trapping that air, we have to open the throat. Now, I have a lot of videos about how to open the throat. Very briefly put, opening the throat is the process of lifting the soft palate, larynx lowers, the tongue, keeping, especially the back of the tongue, keeping it relaxed and lifted, not swallowed, which creates an open acoustical space. This is why a lot of instruments are hollow when you play them, because they need a chamber of resonance. A guitar is hollow when you play them. Drums are actually hollow as well. Every string instrument has a chamber of resonance inside the body of the instrument. This is our chamber of resonance. And this is what I mean by finding the bocca interna, the internal mouth, or singing with the larynx, or finding the internal smile. Internal smile, not just this. It's behind, right? It's like thinking you have a little ball, but it's not here. It's not here. No, no, no. It's deep and tall. And I've talked about this a lot. You can think of it as the beginning of a yawn, the beginning phase of a yawn. Not the full-blown, that's a little bit exaggerated, but the beginning phase, that lift. I also like to joke around that it's kind of like inhaling Santa Claus's ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho! You could also think about a G consonant or an NG as if you're drinking and you're gulping, like the gulping sound effect. L, 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 l. I like the gulping sound effect because it's deeper than a normal G. G, 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 g. The gulping is more laryngeal, more clavicular. L, 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 l. And what I mean by using the gulping to open the throat, I don't just mean gulp. I mean inhale the gulp. So if this is a gulp, l, 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 l. Inhale that. You see, what's happening is when you say a G or a K, most of the time you're doing the opposite of opening. You're actually closing everything, right? The back of the tongue needs to make contact with the palate, and so everything becomes small. G, g. It's like you're almost choking yourself. G. But when you inhale the G, the opposite happens. The tongue separates from the palate as the palate rises and the larynx lowers. So g, open. And you feel, you know when you feel it. You feel this, almost like this valve has been switched from off to on. There's this opening. And this induces a lot of head voice in the sound. And that's fine. Don't be shy of sounding a bit dumb. It's very yawny by nature when we get into this position. So I digress. We open the throat when we inhale. We are now trapping air, right? We're expanding intercostals, diaphragm is lowering, and we're trapping air. Do this at home with me. The opening of the throat is very important. Don't skip it. It happens simultaneously with the inhalation. Right? That opening of the throat is where that pillar of fauces is, right? Is where that uvula is. That's how deep it is. It's there. Wisdom teeth and back. That's where that O, that oo vowel lives, right? We like to say a lot that we sing with an oo and an O. That's what you're talking about. I had a whole video about this. That's what I'm talking about. Opening, not here. That's just opening the mouth. Opening the throat. Okay, now that you have the throat open and you have your inhalation phase complete, I want you now to aspirate while maintaining an open throat. Aspirate as if you just went for a run. You did a cardiovascular workout, and I'm not talking about light jogging. No, you went for an intense workout and you're, wow, that was a good workout, man. I'm out of breath. That type of aspiration. Why do I mean to aspirate in this manner? Because when we sing, we want a release of pressurized air, a stream of energized air. This is not going to cut it. Hi, ho. And this is why I've also mentioned before in my videos, singing opera is not for the shy. And I know there's a lot of people, and that's totally fine. There's a lot of people who perhaps aren't used to making a loud sound. Even in their speaking voice, it's a little bit, they're not used to using a lot of air quantity for their sound, and so they're a little bit like this. That's not going to cut it, at least not if you're trying to do this. So I need an open throat position, inhalation, and while maintaining the open throat, exhale. Exhale a puff of energized air. Inhale again. and do so one more time. Make sure that you're not closing the throat as you aspirate with energy, okay? As you're aspirating with intention, okay? Don't do this. I'm opening when I'm inhaling, but I'm closing, my larynx is coming up when I'm exhaling and aspirating a puff of air. No. If you want, you can always touch your larynx to see if it's greatly rising. It shouldn't. It should stay, for the most part, in a comfortable, low, open position. You should also feel that when you're aspirating with intention, as if you're trying to get rid of your air all at once, the body kicks in, right? And I think I have so many videos where I talk about the epigastric region, the region right below your chest, protruding, right? We do so when we sneeze, when we cough, when we aspirate, when we holler. The body does this by itself. You don't do it. The body is reacting to not just a release of air, no, a pressurized release of air. So, in other words, let go, loosen up, release. This is what I mean by releasing the sound. It has nothing to do with color, with the quality of sound. No, it's talking about releasing the air. Okay? Try this a couple times. Take your time with it so that you don't get lightheaded, because you could get lightheaded. You know, you're inhaling, you're exhaling quickly, and you're doing so in an aspirated, pressurized manner. Okay? So do that a couple times. Feel this like an accordion. Expansion, compression. Expansion, compression. Right? Like the chimney bellow. Good. You can put pause and do this for a couple times. And when you feel ready to continue, you can put play, as we're going to go to the second level of this thing. What we're trying to do is, without stopping the energy, without stopping this feeling of air flowing, inhaling and flowing, we're going to gradually start to make contact with the air. So the next phase of this is not singing. You would think it is, but it's not. That's not what gradual is. That's just step A all the way to step Z. No. The next level is a sigh. A sigh is a breathy phonation. It means the chords are starting to make contact with the air, but they're still quite loose. Okay? They're still quite loose. In other words, they are apart longer than they are together, which means more air is escaping through them. This is fine for now as we go into level 2. Continuing this feeling of open throat, okay? Like the accordion or like the chimney bellows, right? We're now going to accompany this aspiration with a sigh. Now, notice it's not a weak sigh. It's not a no, we have lost the energy of the air. We're no longer aspirating. No, keep that feeling of cardiovascular activity, that air coming in and out with pressure and with energy. Keep that. And just sigh through it while maintaining an open throat. Don't do this. No, you close the throat. Keep the valve open. Keep the ball floating, that openness. It does feel like a yawn. Ding, 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 ding. Correct, correct, correct. When we yawn, we do the correct process, the correct trajectory of what we should do when we sing. When we are in a roller coaster and we go, woo! When we're in a party or we're congratulating someone, we're like, woohoo! Isn't it crazy how easy we can sing super high or phonate super high without feeling any tension? It's because we're following the concepts that I'm talking about. The tilt and the stretch. while the air is doing the work. However, when we sing, we don't replicate the process. Why is it that when we sing, we don't do the holler, the roller coaster hoo-ha, right? Woo! We should. We should do it with other things in mind as well, but the idea is the same. So, inhale, keep an open throat, and sigh with intention. Sigh with energy. Pick your octave. If you're a tenor, if you're a bass, if you're a baritone, if you're a soprano, if you're a mezzo-soprano, okay? Pick your octave, one that's comfortable, not super high, not super low, somewhere around the middle, in a place that's comfortable, and sigh with me. We're keeping that feeling of energy, we're keeping the body engaged because we're not just, no, we are exhaling with a bit of energy, with compression. If you want to take more time doing this, put pause as we're going to go to the next level. Level 3, okay. What we're going to do now is continue this process of making contact with the air more and more until we make a resonant sound. The next step to the sigh is a moan. A moan now has clear adduction, okay? So I want you to open the throat, inhale, and go from aspiration, sighing, and moaning. Keep a couple things in mind, like always. Inhale with an open throat, and exhale with an open throat, okay? Don't close it. Another thing, when we're moaning, we're now adducting the cords in a manner in which they are now becoming more closer together than they are farther apart. We like to put this terminology of chest voice or full voice. We're now making contact with the full voice, but we're doing it in a very tensionless manner. So don't rigidify or thicken the chords. Don't scream, don't start singing. No, this is what we want. Okay, aspiration, just to get us back into the groove of things. Sighing. Moaning. So we are going into this next step, maintaining this acoustical space, not over thickening. We don't want that. That's grunting. That's not moaning. And keep associating this idea of pleasure or release or relax, whatever terminology works with you. Associate that with your singing, okay? I've said this before. We moan and we sigh out of pleasure. We scream and we grunt out of pain. Don't associate singing with pain. Associate singing with pleasure. And it's funny, every time I do this, I go into this sound because I'm trying to associate myself as if someone's giving me a massage and I'm just trying to relax everything. Relax the jaw, relax the tongue. Okay? While trying to maintain this open and trying to maintain and keeping the motor alive. That has to always be there in the sound. The thing is, we get so caught up with this, we forget that the source of the sound, the fuel, is with the air. This is why they call it aria. You're singing in aria, air. So again, moaning. And maintain this feeling of lift, this quote-unquote dumbness in the sound. I know it's silly, right? A little bit of a dumb, a little bit of surfer dude. Hey bro, hey dude. As you are striving to keep this openness deep and tall. Right, that moan should almost arrive, or we should almost feel it, close to where we snore. Deeply, not here. No. There. Deep and tall, right? Where that NG lives. Lying. NG with an open throat. Everything I say will always be with an open throat. Doing anything with a closed throat is useless. An NG with an open throat. That's deep and tall. That's where I want my moan to feel. That vowel, that keep that aspiration. So we have aspiration, we have sighing, we have moaning. All of it stem from this flow of air making contact with the cords. The next thing that I want to start to add to the sound is a feeling of pulse. Almost like a flutter, as if it's cold. Ah, oh my God. Ah, it's cold. Ah. Or a ghost. Oh. Add that to the moan, okay? So, if you want to take time with the moan, press pause. We're now going to go to the next level, okay? Repeating the process. Aspiration with open throat. Release. Lanzar, right? Send the air far out. Sigh. Moan. And flutter or coldness. And keep that flutter going as you slide all the way down, right? Well, that's gonna allow you to do what's happening is that the vocal cords are making contact with air, but because there's a pulse, there's a flutter, it's making contact and opening for a puff of air to release while closing again and vibrating, and then opening for another puff of air to release and closing. This is going to get us to that feeling of full adduction as we continue the levels without feeling stuck or like we stopped the air. No, don't stop it. Don't make contact and rigidify. You make contact and vibrate. Right? Another way to think about this is almost like a lot of glottic attacks, mini glottic attacks. You know that we've probably all met that one person that has that awkward laugh. Right? Think a little bit of SpongeBob if you've seen that cartoon, but do it with an open throat. The point of this is to start to feel that the air is making contact with the cords, but it's spinning, it's causing vibration. It's not stopping, it's not rigidifying, it's not no. It's making contact and bouncing off this acoustical chamber of space that you make when you open your throat. And this is how we start to feel the sensations when teachers say, it feels here, it feels here, it feels here. That's how we get there. It's not by shoving sound here, it's not by shoving, pushing. No, strangulation, no. Be fluttery. Allow air to escape. I am giving you permission to allow air to escape. Okay, this is okay. This is little by little also building the coordination and the musculature, the strength needed to finally adduct and maintain adducted while still feeling that freedom of release, of flexibility, of vibration. So if you want to put pause and practice aspiration, sighing, moaning, and then moaning with a flutter or with multiple glottic attacks to kind of feel that air moving through the chords, as it's making contact. Move it, so that you can feel how the head voice starts to integrate, how the full voice is a balance between both the arytenoid and the cricothyroid while maintaining an open throat position. But pause. Now we're going to continue with the next step. Now the next step is a yodel. This is something I found this out by myself, and then I realized that singers like Björling, UC Björling used to do it to continue to further go into this idea of releasing pressure, tension, making sure the larynx is not compressed, making sure the back of the tongue is not locked, okay? The yodel is a little bit like Tarzan. For those of you who have seen Tarzan, or for those of you who have seen George of the Jungle, right? It's that sort of now you have to do this with an open throat. Don't do it with a closed. No, that's not gonna do anything. Okay, what's happening is you're flipping to falsetto. That's falsetto with an open throat position. And then this little crack or yodel happens as we connect to the full voice. It's a register switch between falsetto and chest. Falsetto and chest. Falsetto and chest. And we need to learn to connect and disconnect. Let go and switch back to falsetto. Okay, so this is going to be the next phase of this gradual adduction to make contact with air. Aspiration, sigh, moan, flutter, yodel, and it's always gentle in quality. It's never aggressive, and it's always following this feeling of the air moving. It's not shy. No. So that the body has a feeling of engaging, of supporting, right? Appoggio, okay, is the body reacting to a release of pressurized air through a narrow opening. That's appoggio. That's connecting with the breath. The reason why we don't sing in falsetto is because in falsetto, the chords are so loose that so much air is flowing through the chords that's very difficult for there to be any resistance and therefore no pressure. However, falsetto can be a fantastic development tool. I warm up in falsetto to this day. I constantly warm up in falsetto because in falsetto you can do 90% of the things you can do in full voice, you can do in falsetto. You can be in open throat, you can have the tilt, and you can stretch and thin in falsetto. This is the roller coaster hoo-ha that we call siren in the music when it comes to singing. Okay, we just want to now have that position, which is 90% there. The only 10% that's missing is the connection to the breath, which engages the full voice. And this is what this yodel is going back and forth between falsetto and connecting to the full voice. So again, aspiration, sighing, yawning, moaning, fluttering, yodeling, see how the air never stops. It's a passenger in this flow, and it accompanies the whole journey. Originates from here, and it's a passenger as it makes contact with the vocal folds, vibrates and bounces off the acoustical space, and is sent out in a resonant manner. Okay? Practice these steps. Okay? Put pause, play around with them, do them in a comfortable note. If the yodel is giving you some trouble, think Tarzan, that always helps. And make sure you're doing it in an open throat position. I'm going to keep saying this. Don't do this. Or what usually happens is we start in an open throat and little by little it creeps up, right? No. Maintain it all. You're going to realize your larynx does move. It jiggles. That's the whole point. It's to keep the larynx nice and free, but in its low position, in its open position. Not here. No. I know these are goofy sounds, they're silly sounds, I'm not oblivious to it. This isn't the end result. This is just a way to get you to experience and feel how to get to an adductive resonant sound without tension, without forcing, without the action to want to control and compress. Let it go, baby. Let it be ugly. It's very liberating. It's quite liberating, I have to say. You don't have to worry about constantly sounding good or pretty or what people will think. Let it go and let it be loud. Let it be obnoxiously loud and obnoxiously ugly while maintaining an open throat and maintaining the feeling of the body being engaged, the air flowing with pressure, with energy. Put pause and try it. Once you feel ready to go, the next step is dialing it back to an operatic vibrating sound. Okay, so we're going from this very wild, vibrating almost in an unyielding manner to dialing it back a bit, just a bit, so that the larynx is not moving up and down like crazy. It's free and moving in its position. It's never compressed or caged. It's just going from this to this so that it's nice and free. And we are making contact with the air, okay? So we're gonna do all the steps, do them with me. Aspiration, open throat as you do it. Sighing, moaning, flutter, yodel, keep the intention, okay? Keep the air flowing in an energized way. And now dialing back into an operatic sound. These are the steps you should start to take little by little to find the adducted resonant sound without tensing the whole mechanism, without stopping the air, but making contact with the air. When you do this enough times that it becomes second nature, right? And you become, when you do it first, perhaps it might be a little bit, it's new, right? So a new concept might feel weird, but you have to continue to tell yourself, relax into it, right? It's like riding a bike. The first time you ride a bike, you're so nervous and it's new that you topple over one way, you're toppling over, or you fall, and it's just like, okay, just relax into it. I'm gonna find the coordination. It's not about strength, it's about coordination. Riding a bike is not about how strong you are, it's about can you keep your balance? Can you keep the coordination? Same thing. And send it. Send it. Once this process is fluid within you, it's like muscle memory. It's like you can't sing without it because it's so ingrained in your process, in your phonation, your muscle memory. It's so ingrained. Then you can play around with, But there's no point in doing it vice versa, because you don't have the basic foundation of even making a sound. You're going to realize that when you constantly maintain an open throat, when you literally do not know how to sing unless you maintain an open throat position, unless you're in the tilt, with this feeling of making contact with the air and just vibrate, 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 vibrate. Then you're going to realize how your job as a singer is to just maintain that posture, maintain that position as you ascend and descend in your range and allow things to happen. You don't cover the sound. Covering is not an action you do. Covering is an action that happens as a result of maintaining the correct open throat position and singing with the breath, of course. You don't cover. The sound does it naturally. You allow the cover, the giro, the turn to happen because you're in the tilt. It may sound complicated, but we do this naturally when we yawn. You don't even have to think about it, right? Because it's ingrained in you. Nobody yawns like this. No, they yawn like this. You're going to realize that as you sing, singing operatically is closer to the process of yawning than it is to singing other genres or belting or singing. It has nothing to do with that operatic singing. It's about maintaining an acoustical space, making contact as air is flowing through the chords in a pressurized manner. Cover will happen by itself. You don't have to worry about it. Warm up this way. Warm up with head dominant sounds. And once this is ingrained, once you can sing from the bottom, the lowest point of your range, to the highest point of your range, and it feels quote unquote easy, manageable, doable, doesn't feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Do it in all the vowels, not just ah, being able to do it in I, O, without A and E closing the throat. Those are peculiar vowels, the closed vowels. They wanna force you to close and spread. Once you're able to do your entire range in all the vowels, and then be able to add consonants, and you know where I'm getting with this, starting to apply music, repertoire, arias, which, you know, arias will challenge you by going up and down in the melodies, jumping octaves, and doing so with words and consonants. Don't let any of that interrupt this process. Don't let it interrupt this process. This is a lot easier said than done, by the way. Don't let words, consonants, notes going up in a range, down in a range, jumping octaves stop you from maintaining this flow, like the bellow. Keep everything vibrating internally, all your vowels there. Bright Italian vowels without swallowing the tongue. That's also very important to mention. It's not ooh, no. Okay, bright vowels in that dark open space. Then you can decide if you want to adduct in a more firmer manner, if you want to lean on the breath with more pressure in passages that are fortissimo or declamatory, to give a little bit more, to apply a little bit more of this quote-unquote melocky method, whatever. That's up to you. But do so once you have learned this fundamental. Once you have opened up the instrument, you're going to realize that most wind instruments work in this manner. You grab a flute, you blow air into the reed, which allows the instrument to phonate. Even a recorder, right, that we used to have in school, middle school, kindergarten, one of those little recorders, works the same way. It won't work if you're choking the recorder, banging it on. God damn it, work. No. You blow into it, into the reed, air makes contact, phonation happens. Same thing here. Blow air, make contact with that air. And you're going to realize how, oh, it's that easy? I don't need to be working that hard? Most of you will probably feel, that can't be right. That's wrong. It's too easy. Well, wouldn't that be nice if it's so easy? That would be really cool. That's the goal. That's what it is. That's how it should feel. Okay? Trust me. It's a good thing that this is easy because the difficulty layers and layers and layers and layers up the more once you get on stage, right? There's the orchestra, there's the fighting, there's the choreography, the blocking, the costumes, the movement, the constant rehearsals, you feeling tired, the traveling. There's a million other things that's going to make it difficult. Don't make it any more difficult than it has to. It's a valve. Open the valve, blow air through it, make contact with that air. But perhaps now you understand why people say stop the air. It's not what you think. It's not, I have to stop the air. No, it's making contact with it, right? Corelli used to say, singing is where your breath meets your larynx, which is a pretty cool way of saying the same thing, right? Where your breath meets your larynx, right? Making contact with the chords. Initiate vibration. No shoving. No sending sound here, right? I believe it was Gilly who told Del Monaco in a very, at least I thought it was pretty funny. He said something in the lines of, if you pull the blanket too high, you're going to uncover your feet. And perhaps you might see how that applies to the voice. If you're constantly trying to find the mask in this way, your larynx is going to rise. You're going to close your instrument. And you're also going to close what Gianfranco Cecile used to always say, the subwoofer of the sound, right? You're constantly searching for the brightness, the squeal, in an artificial manner, in a tensed, shoved manner. And the voice is no longer round, elegant. It's missing the warm quality, the woofer, the bass. Okay? You can make a full-bodied sound. Now you understand why it's full-bodied. It's an aspiration. It's a full-bodied sound without pressing, punching, forcing, beating the crap out of your chords. Make contact with the air. Well, I hope this was helpful to many of you. Like I always say, these are my experiences, my observations, what I have learned through experience and singing in the stage. You don't have to agree with me. No one is forcing you to do any of these things. This is an open community where we want to keep things positive and help each other out. If you have exercises of your own, ideas of your own, please comment them, share them with the community, especially if you have gotten results from those experiences, share them with the community. That's the whole point. We need to help each other so that we can constantly progress. We are all students. I'm a student myself. I constantly continue to learn things, make mistakes, and teach myself, and continue to be a student in every single way. Especially the more that I get to sing with incredible colleagues with more years of experience than I do, I love to hear what they have to say and learn from them. If you're not a member, Become a member of the CTS community, as it helps me continue to put content out like this. And also it includes a wonderful amount of benefits, such as priority replies to all your comments, which is always difficult to reply to everyone. However, if you're a member, you can be sure that I will put you in priority. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as always, continue studying, continue practicing. The work continues. Ciao, ciao for now.